right?
Yes.
And then what you're doing, you do the same thing that these advanced language processing models do now.
Yes.
Is you're looking
Yes.
for commonalities across the narratives. And as you gather more and more narratives within a certain domain, you start to understand the underlying principles.
Yes.
So this is what happened in the book of Exodus, by the way, because before Moses has the commandments revealed to him, he sits for an unknown amount of time, dawn till midnight, every day, judging the Israelites and their complaints. And so he hears thousands and thousands of cases. Right. And then you can imagine that the revelation it's the revelation of the substructure of what constitutes justice itself.
Yes.
But you can't get to that without this case analysis. So why, with all the money at your disposal and the hypothetical freedom that might have bestowed upon you, why did you decide to, stay actively working, stay actively employed? Now, you were a professor at UTexas?
Yes, I was an adjunct.
You were an adjunct, and in the business school?
In the business school.
Okay, and so you decided to continue doing that. And what was driving you to do that?
Because I was fascinated with asking questions. And the difference from a judicial setting and the way we practice the case method is, in the judicial setting, eventually a jury or a judge is going to decide what's right. Mm-hmm. In our setting, it's the actor themselves playing out the act. So I was fascinated, and frankly, I didn't know what to do with my own life. I mean, I had first started my first business to get out of the hot sun. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I started the second business so I could make more money than my father. I wanted to overcome him.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But then I did that, and it's like, you're 28, what next?
Right.
And I didn't know. So I went to actually learn myself, and by asking questions and digging in, and then...
Were you ever tempted on the hedonistic front? I mean, you're pretty young at that point. You have the world at your feet in some real sense, so...
Well, I'm not exactly Brad Pitt, so I don't think the hedonistic part of chasing girls...
Well, money can make up for that.
Well, no, it does help. It does help. Apparently, it didn't help enough, but no, I just never was interested. The hedonistic thing just didn't really appeal to me.
That's fortunate for you.
Well, I had a father who I loved dearly, but he was rich one year and broke the next, but always lived as if we had money. And there was something about that I didn't like. Now, I'm sure there's something our children don't like about me. So that's a typical father-son thing, judging it. But I think that it set up something in me that I've always been more about competence than prestige. And so chasing prestige to me just never felt right. And so the hedonistic route would have felt like
prestige over competence is narcissism.
Yeah. So I just wasn't appealing. Mm-hmm. But I was lost.
And so how long lost when?
Well, I was lost at 29. Look, people only ask, they're only desperate when there's no hope and they hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
Or you get to the top and you ask, is that all there is?
Right.
So I'm at the top. And I have to ask, is that all there is? And I said, I don't know what to do except to go Socratically explore with a group of other people.
Well, that's a good thing. If you're somewhere and you don't know what to do, exploring seems like a good idea. And it is definitely the case that the only genuine pathway to exploration is something like the pursuit of the questions that honestly plague you.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and there's a destiny in that too that's extremely interesting, because a different set of problems plagues each individual.
Yes.
Right. So you're going to have doubts. Everyone does, but you're going to have your doubts.
Yes.
And the strange thing about your own doubts is that your doubts contain the seeds of your progress.
Yes.
Because if you pursue those doubts, first of all, they're stopping you because they're doubts. If you pursue them and you rectify them, then you're going to find a pathway forward. But you can't do that without honest questioning.
Well, and to foreshadow what will happen later, this set up everything that my wife, Laura, who really gets credit for the schools we've built, but it sets up everything. It's the hero's journey story, right? It's Pilgrim's Progress. It's the hero going out, looking for the Grail, fighting dragons and monsters. And then you realize when you get to the end, it wasn't about the Grail at all. That's how the hero changed in the process. And so it really began to set up that pattern over and over and over again, right?
Eternal transformation, right? As a consequence of learning. One of the things I've thought about Joe Rogan a lot, because Rogan's success on the media front, I would say, is unparalleled.
Yes.
He has the #1 podcast in 100 countries.
Wow.
Right. It's not. I think he's the most significant media figure who ever lived, possibly, in terms of sheer numbers and breadth of reach. And he runs a shoestring operation. It's really just him and his producer. He picks all his guests, and all he does is ask them the questions that he actually has. And what's so interesting about that is, well, it's made Joe an incredibly well-informed person. I mean, because I think he's done, it's some thousands of podcasts now. So he's had thousands of hours of case studies, let's say. But he also can bring his listeners on the same journey, because the probability that if he's asking an honest question, that will be a question that resounds with his audience is extremely high. And it's so interesting to see how much power there is in that, is that his stripped down approach, which also requires virtually no editing and certainly no special effects, his stripped down approach is the most compelling approach. And I think it is because it's based on an honest Socratic method.
But it does require curiosity, and it requires a genuine interest in true choices. And one of the hardest things as a Socratic teacher is, if you never ask a question you know the answer to. It has to be an equally balanced question. It has to be fair, right? And so if you're trying if you're putting your thumb on the scale, the other person immediately will know it. And so when I've listened to you on Joe Rogan and Rogan's podcast, he's incredibly good at listening and then asking a very honest question. There's no, and people would spot it if he wasn't.
Absolutely.
Here's the deal. The government keeps raising rates because it's the only tool they have to keep inflation under control, and it's not working. You can't spend your way out of inflation. You've seen the impact on the stock market, and you've seen the impact on your savings. Hedge inflation by owning gold, whether physical gold and silver in your safe or through an IRA in precious metals, where you can hold real gold and silver in a tax-sheltered retirement account. Buy gold and get a free safe to store it in. That's right, on qualifying purchases from Birch Gold Group now through March 31st, they'll ship a free safe directly to your door. Just text Jordan to 989898 to get your free info kit on gold and to claim eligibility for your free safe. Then talk to one of their precious metals specialists. That's Jordan to 989898 today.
There is a very old religious insistence that pride is a cardinal sin and that humility is the virtue that counters pride. And then you have to ask, well, what does it mean? What does humility mean? And it means something like admission of ignorance. But what's so useful about that, and why it's a virtue and why it's something very useful to practice, is that if you do admit to your ignorance, which is to note what you don't know and to dare ask it, then you immediately rectify. I told my daughter, for example, very straightforwardly, you only have to ask a stupid question once if you listen to the answer, right? So she's been in many situations where, she was in over her head, like we all are, very often.
Like me today.
And it's very tempting to pretend that you know and to not ask the stupid question. But first of all, almost everybody around who's participating, let's say, in the conversation has the same stupid question. And second, if you don't ask it, well, then you remain stupid. So that's not helpful. And
and I think this was a great lesson of, like a lot I've learned about parenthood and about having this same approach with your children. I mean, this, and I've seen you with Julian up close, of being genuinely interested, but offering choices and listening and caring as a parent. And so, I didn't have children at this point, but I have a room full of 28-year-olds that are bright, and we can explore life together and entrepreneurship and how you make money and what it means if you make money. And that ended up being, I spent quite a time at the University of Texas. We built up the entrepreneurship program. We won all sorts of awards. And then spun off our own business school.
Why was it well received, do you think? And why was it also, it's two things, eh? It was well received by the students, but obviously it was also well received by the administration.
It was well received, and you know enough about academia. The teachers, so the professors who were teachers, loved us. What we did, though, is we had a very firm, very hard contract of what was required to be in the class. We graded on a forced curve when everyone else gave all A's. The harder we made the program, the more people we attracted. And so, but at some point, I think our teachers, who were all entrepreneurs who had been successful, so all adjuncts, won the Teacher of the Year award 11 out of 11 years, which,
And how big a group was that?
well, there were 141 professors, and our group of 8 were teaching 25% of all the elective hours in the school as adjuncts.
Wow, as adjuncts.
And
So being paid nothing.
yes, so you can imagine what happens next in this story,
Yeah, right.
right? So we're basically all fired or we all quit, depending on which story you want.
Yeah, yeah.
But we go start our own school, and we focus on.
When was this?
This would have been 2000.
And what was, I see. And so that was after 8 years?
Yes.
8 years. And what was the rationale for the firing/quitting?
Probably that I was too disagreeable, which was fair. But I will say I got a call from inside the school from someone, and he said, look, a tenured professor, and he said, look, I have to tell you, they're going to fire half of you this summer and the other half at Christmas. Because, and we were at that point attracting more than half of all the students to the school and teaching a quarter of them. And they said they just, the tenured political faculty just doesn't want you here. So we decided we were going to teach one last class off campus, across the street from the campus. And 130 people showed up for no credit. They drove from Waco, from Houston to Austin, from Dallas to Austin. So they came from all over, including faculty from those schools. And we thought, you know what? Maybe we should have our own MBA program.
Right.
Now, we knew nothing about that was impossible, right? No one ever told us you couldn't get a credit. But we managed to build a program. We ended up winning all sorts of awards from Princeton Review with really Navy SEALs, Olympic athletes, and young entrepreneurs. And we built this 100-hour-a-week, 10-month program that was just brutal, but changed our lives and changed the lives of the students.
So that was right after you were at the